What is going on, you guys? It's your boy, New Mike Kudis. We're back with episode 90 of the video game therapy series. Yeah, first things first. I bought something. I participated in the global financial laundromat that is schmapitalism. I can feel Uncle Sam smiling at me for making a purchase. No, I bought a new microphone. So I bought a dynamic microphone as opposed to the condenser microphones. And of course, I learned about this before buying it because, like any good consumer, I have to do, or actually, sorry, any quote unquote smart consumer, I have to do research on what to buy before I buy it. I'm not so stupid as to be a impulse buyer. So, of course, anytime I'm going to make any purchase at all, I have to justify it by sinking an hour of research, pointless research, mind you, into whatever it is that I'm going to buy. So I now know the difference between a condenser and a dynamic microphone. And of course, resulted in me purchasing a dynamic microphone. So basically, I guess if you're not going to do this research yourself, which I would recommend not doing, especially if you're not a loser podcaster like me, condenser microphones are the kind of the shitty ones. They do kind of what the word sounds like to do. They kind of condense all of the sound into something, so they pull a lot of sound from the environment, so you get a lot of ambient sound. Whereas the dynamic microphone is the ones where, like comedians, podcast, everyone who's holding up a mic to their mouth, singers and stuff like that, all use dynamic ones, so it doesn't pick up a bunch of ambient sounds. And it's dynamic in the sense of how far away you are from the microphone is how loud you'd sound moving forward and backwards. So anyway, yeah, hopefully I sound a little bit sexier. Not that I don't really have I guess I probably have a decent voice. I don't quite have the vocal fry of I'm not like too close to the vocal fry. I have probably a little bit, and I don't have like the mega deep sexy voice. There's some people that just have like a super deep voice, and that's why they're, I guess, nice to listen to. Because I guess you don't really hear. I mean, I don't know. I don't run around and consume as much as I can, but a lot of people that talk for a living or have any kind of do a lot of communication, I guess a lot in terms of volume, all have voices that are relatively nice to listen to, right? Some people that even sound super, like Morgan Freeman. I think I would reason that people would listen to him. Doesn't even matter what he's saying. He could be reading Mein Kampf, and you'd still want to listen to him only because it's a deep, sexy black man voice. So that's just that's the appeal of it. And there's other appeals depending on the demographic, right? There's kind of like that deep fried vocal fry voice that is like kind of annoying, but it's annoying in like a funny or entertaining way. I don't really have any good examples of that, but there's not only people that just sound like a loser, right? They kind of sound good. The other thing about, maybe it's just like a very Zoomer thing to have, is when there are faceless YouTubers who you've heard their voice. If they get a new microphone like I just did, the translation between what you thought their face would look like and what their voice is also changes, because there's like YouTubers who are like faceless YouTubers that then you'll eventually see their face after, I don't know, a couple of years of listening to whatever they're saying, and you're like, what the fuck? Why is that gonna look like that? Looks like shit. I thought he would have, I don't know, I was hoping he'd be more attractive than that. And I guess there's not, I would say that like I should include women in that, but there's really not. I think most women like to show their face. So I can't even think of a female like no-show faceless YouTuber. But I don't know, there's that whole thing with that Dream idiot that showed his face, and everyone's like, oh my god, why the fuck does he look like that? He wasn't even that ugly. He's kind of just a normal ass looking dude, but I think he looked a lot gayer than he sounded, maybe. So that was the thing. So I don't know, maybe with my new microphone my face changes now, and you're questioning even more what I would have looked like. Of course, that is if you don't already know who I am, which is probably everybody that already watches these videos. So I don't know how well my voice actually matches my face, but I suppose that's not for me to decide. Anyway, let me talk about something other than nothing, namely nothing. No, I'm just kidding. Let's see. I'm not that I need to know what's going on. Like, I don't need to know this is not cultural, by the way. This is just like predicative of the future. I mean, I don't need to know what's like going to happen per se. That doesn't stop me from trying to kind of hedge my bets in that sense. So what I mean by this, and where I'm going with this, is I think there's some sentiment in the culture. It's not even the people. Everybody, like people you talk to, there's always like this sense of like, oh, times are ahead. It's like it's good. It's the world might be fucked pretty soon. It's not always doomy. Sometimes it's like people that speak out against the doom, and they're like, yeah, I don't know. Everyone just seems on edge lately. It's like either way, there's this strong sentiment that like something's going to happen, right? There's going to be a dictator, right? There's going to be kind of like a Hitler moment or something. And again, part of me would be very quick to just go, well, this is just kind of bullshit peddled by, I don't know, large institutions creating social media posts that get people in a frenzy. And that, things will stay the same. The more things change, the more they'll stay the same. But again, I don't mean to be somebody that's overly conservative in the sense that I don't think nothing will change. Like there might not be some a war or something very impactful. And I think with technology too, it merely like accelerates the timeline of history. Whereas, it maybe took several hundred years for things to happen. Technology kind of accelerates the timeline under which the cycles of history, happen, because history does happen in cycles. Empires rise and fall. And I'm not necessarily indicating that the American empire is near its end, but it is possible. I'm not saying that I'm not. Again, I think it'd be stupid for me to be like, well, that's such a crazy idea. It's been around for as long as I know. And it's like, well, yeah, I haven't been around that long, And even like there's only, like we're just getting to the point generationally where it feels like America's been around forever and will be around forever. That's what. Then it's an interesting question I ask people now. Is I'm like, well, how long do you think America lasts? And I don't mean like, and some people just say, oh, forever. America's always going to be around. America will never, America won't ever not be just like the world. It won't be just be us. Which I think is naive. I mean, of course, you can look. Every time you make an argue about history, people are like, well, that they didn't have the internet back then, and they were different. They were dumb. Like they weren't educated. I went to school. Or whatever. They make some argument historically why it's so much different now than it was then, or whatever. But I do think it is stupid and naive to think that there isn't at least some timeline under which America isn't. Maybe you think it's 300 years, which again, fine. That's like a fair opinion to have, but that's at least reasonable in the sense that it's not forever. It isn't just the end of history. It's not just, oh yeah, America was created and all problems are gone. It's like, no, obviously there's tons of problems, and I don't think America's going to last forever. That being said, I don't think it's like a 2-year timeline, but it's very possible that it's within, like a 50-year timeline, which I would be around for. So then, like, if I'm around for this timeline of supreme change, then it's like, all right, well, then what do I do? Do I make an apocalypse bunker? Because that's really what these the billionaire people, the people that you would think have great insight onto how the inner workings of society, in terms of who does what and power and stuff like that, they're making apocalypse bunkers. So that's like some reason to believe that something, at least they think on some, maybe they have enough money to where they can just make whatever they want. But it seems weird that they all like unequivocally go after apocalypse bunkers. Like, it's like if they all put bowling alleys in their homes, you'd be like, is there something to having a bowling alley that makes you a genius or something? Like, is bowling a bowling alley, like, is it a sign, or is it an attractor of wealth of some kind? Like, why is it that everybody has a bowling alley? So in the same way, it's like everyone has an apocalypse bunker. Maybe there's some, they're trying to say something. Not that we need to read into their dumbass, purchases, but maybe a lot of them do think that there's kind of some kind of apocalyptic or the end of an era or some big transitional period that is nigh. And I'm not really here to make predictions on it, but I would say my inkling is that it happens within my lifetime. It could happen within a 20-year period. I think that's very reasonable. I think, now again, I'm just being very speculative here. I'm not a billionaire in charge of everything. So of course that's, where my opinion kind of ends. But I do think there's going to be, there's at least a decade more or so of like rot, where things get like, I don't know, kind of corruption continues to expand and be normalized, and there's just even more of it to where, like, because I think there's a lot of it's like belief in the fabric of what exists now. I think that is surely decreasing. I think I'm not out of bounds to say that. Whereas at the beginning of an empire, it's very like, yes, everybody agrees with everything. Everyone's on the same page. We're going to be here forever. Yes, we've done it. We are. And I think that generation is kind of on the way out. And now it's like, okay, everyone's just a liar. And, everyone kind of knows that. It's like, that's why I'm just not shocked. And like, maybe it's just old people that are ones that are shocked when like somebody's a pedophile, but 0% of me is shocked at all when it's like, oh, such and such diddles kid. It's like, why is, duh, like, that's just not shocking. So maybe it's just the overall faith in like this vision of like utopia is dwindling, and that again is kind of this cyclical. It happens. There's just kind of growth and rot and growth and rot. It's a boom and bust cycle. I've said this before, and I think we're on the down trot to another boom or bust. And I again, part of me it battles that and pushes back because I don't want to be like, well, I'm just kind of falling into the trap that everyone else is falling into, right? I'm believing it because they want me to believe it. But my media intake is very limited, and mostly that is just from talking to other people and trying to hear and seeing what's going on, and I guess just being around technology too. Technology is a very strange impact on all this because they're like religiously, they're kind of, and I say religiously in terms of like what they worship, in terms of what they value. The value system is strange, right? It's not, technologists don't inherently value humans, at least humanity in that sense. They value humans as like a token of labor or hands or on some measure of like, oh, humans are, are three morsels of innovation. That's what they're good for. It's like, it's not, you don't view human as something more spiritual. That's kind of why I use the word religious there, was with, I think people who really value humanity have some kind of spiritual reverence for humans and not just, they don't view them as some variable in a, increasingly convoluted mathematical equation where it's not like, oh, humans are going to help us with this innovation. Everything else will be, but technologists are very strange and they're just almost, I hate saying this kind of as a technologist, but they're just morally empty. They're not even just bankrupt. It's just, it doesn't really occur. There's not any kind of, everything is mechanistic and reductionist and in some sense materialist. Not in the sense where it's like, oh, what kind of bag do you have? Is that, what brand is that? Whatever. But everything is this is just a collection of these cells. And it's just very, again, it's very reductionist. I think that's a fair word to use. There's always like an answer to everything. And I think I was writing on this, but I guess I'll just articulate it here. I think we're obsessed with purpose, and I'm criminally guilty of this as well. Like, I think we all are naturally, we want to know the purpose of something, as simple as like the purpose of a word within an email or the purpose of our existence. Like, again, from very menial to truly mortal matters, we want to know why, what's the point of this? I think that's very natural. And in some of my ruminations, I've kind of landed on the fact that maybe I'm never going to know, right? There really is no answer. And as much as you want to kind of fight and to try to rationalize the lack of an answer into an answer, in some sense, or try to leverage the lack of an answer against answers or as an answer of some sort, there really isn't, you can't ever justify everything. And I think that's part of the issue, is that anytime you say something, it always begs the question of like, well, why? Well, why do you believe that? Well, why do you think this? Well, why do you say that? You can't and then because everything is like data driven, you need to be able to justify every answer with data. We feel the need to justify everything all the time, even like spiritual views. So if I say like, oh, I value these virtues and I think life should be lived towards these virtuous ends. And someone's like, well, why? And then it's like, well, now I have to justify it. I need a double blind study to make sure that I'm not, I'm not being foolish in my views. I have to justify why I'm doing this. Otherwise, I shouldn't be doing it. Whereas a lot of times I don't, especially on matters of maybe more of a life philosophy, there doesn't need to be like, you don't have to justify everything, because again, at some point you end up either running into circular logic or just a spiral of existentialism where it's just not really helpful. And I think a quote that I've discovered recently that I think is good, is that good philosophy should be useful. Like, it should make you stronger. Good philosophies make you stronger. In the sense where if like having like a philosophy of like life, like vitality, or being in shape, or something as simple as that, it's like a good thing, I think is a good philosophy because it makes you inherently stronger. It makes you value eating healthy. That gives you good reason for doing that. But I think one that is like, and again, a healthy amount of skepticism is good. Obviously, I'm a bit of a skeptic on pretty much everything. But if skepticism alone were my only life philosophy, at a certain point I'd be weaker, because I wouldn't be able to do anything, because I'd sit around all day and ask or question or try to prod and probe of why I'm doing everything. Like every single action I take must have some justification. Whereas if I was like, fuck it, no matter what, I think that, I guess not being fat is a good thing. Okay, well then now I have like just doing that, and I think I'll be a better person. Again, of course, now the skeptic would be like, well, what's better? What if you were, I don't know, I don't even know how you'd be better fat, but whatever. My point is that good philosophy should make you stronger, should make you more capable of dealing with anything, or more better in any kind of subjective sense, which also is kind of cyclical, because how do you really know? How do you define what is then better or worse? But I suppose I don't think it's worth me justifying the fact that being in shape is better than being out of shape. Like, as a general, I don't know. I don't need to justify that. And I'm sure I could, aggregate some studies and things that would convince even the dumbest Marxist that that is in fact the case. Regardless, I don't need to justify that. I don't need to justify everything. I don't need to have studies and numbers and everything that would appease every single, everything is not that hard of a science. Like, there are hard sciences, there are mathematics. If I were to come out and give some ridiculous mathematical thing and then not have any means of proving it, but even like mathematics, Gödel has his incompleteness theorem, which is basically like, the wording of it is like, it can't be both like syntactically complete and like something else, exhaustive or something like, I don't know. There's some words that I should brush up on the words if I'm going to even mention it. But regardless, it basically says that even with mathematical proving schema, it cannot prove itself. And that's like part of the reason why we have been unable to like even just marry general relativity and quantum mechanics, or have even some kind of universal laws that even mathematical proving, like mathematical proofs that like mathematicians used to create these laws of the universe that we're so beholden by, still cannot prove itself without going on, like, without having like a leap of faith, basically, and saying that, okay, we have to say that this is that. We have to go run from, like, I don't know, 1 + 1 = 2. Like, we could argue about that, and it's technically yes. Like, if we didn't like say yes to 1 + 1 = 2, then fine. But then we still have to use that eventually, like use the basic assumptions to prove even the most convoluted thing. The base assumption is still questionable. It's still possible to question even the most rudimentary of things. But either way, I guess kind of extrapolating that into more practical philosophical ideals, at a certain point, you can't go down and justify everything all the time. You just have to say, fuck it. This is what I believe in. I don't give a shit. Okay. It's just not, it's like, this is part, and then maybe the example I'll use is just being, like, having a healthy body, eating and sleeping and exercising, which again is kind of like the math, even like the provably right side to be on. I refuse to budge, like, there's just, my philosophy is I will not eat Pop-Tarts, right? I'm not going to, even if they made it out of veggies, I'm not doing it. I refuse. And I'm not going to justify it either. I don't need to justify it. And I could justify that, but I won't. And so there are things maybe that I don't have to justify. It's like, well, I guess I could argue with like effective altruists or something and saying that, like, I don't need to be making as much. The goal of my life isn't to make as much money as possible. And they're like, well, but justifiably, if you make more money, then you can help most people, and you can like. No, it's never worked really. These effective altruists that I've seen supposedly doing all this, this great work. I'm not sold that they're doing anything good. So I don't need to, that's not a tenet of my philosophy. And while I could sit around and try all day to justify and argue with these people or this hypothetical person, because it's mostly myself I'm arguing with anyway, I'm just not going to do it. Go fuck yourself. That's my opinion. That's my opinion. And I don't need to justify everything I believe. And I realize that's like a stupid idea, and or not a stupid idea, an idea that we've been told against, right? We've been told in school that we have to justify everything. Everything needs justification. Well, like, why do you give that answer? Well, we must justify it. And for academic affairs, that makes sense, right? I can't just, well, the answer I have is 5. And they go, okay, well, 5's wrong. Why did you think 5? It's like, well, I didn't need to justify why the answer is 5. It's like, yes, okay. In this context, in schooling where we're trying to learn, it makes sense. We need to justify our answer. But when it comes to matters of, I'll say pure grayness, when we're not taking a test, or there's not, again, kind of something provably mathematical about something, we don't need to justify every answer, especially on philosophical grounds. So I would say that with philosophical answers that aren't inherently mathematical, or don't have to be inherently mathematical, not everything has that part to it. You don't have to justify everything. So in that same sense, I won't justify why I think this is good or this is bad, because it's something spiritual more so, and that kind of stems from a reverence of the spirituality that I think we have kind of lost as rationalists. Because I don't know, as a technologist, it's very you're surrounded by rationalists. It's very much justification is kind of the religion. There's an answer. There's purpose behind everything. Everything needs some kind of answer. And again, the answers are always debatable, right? You're always allowed to just say, well, why is this the answer? And then kind of debate it, right? But something without an answer is silly, is stupid, right? At that point, you're just burning gay people for no reason. Like that's on the same level of heresy, not justifying your answer, which I think can be part of the problem, because there's some things that you shouldn't have to justify why they're good or why they're bad. They should just be done, right? It's not even like, well, like everything being a means to an end on some sense is one other like mutation of this. It's like, well, why help the homeless person? Well, you'd want to help them because if you're in the situation, you'd want them to help you. It's like, what if they're going to use it for drugs? Well, statistically, like just if you want to do something nice because you should probably do something like it's just because it's easy, like holding open a door for somebody. I'm never going to see this person again. I'm never going to get, my value back from this. And even like if there was a way for me to roundabout justify why I needed to hold the door for somebody, like I should just do it. It's so fucking easy. I shouldn't need to spend an hour talking about why you should hold the door open for people when it's such an easy thing to do. I'm not senile and geriatric. I can just hold it open. I don't need to like understand the nuances of why. And there's this like theory of where I like giving and then social, I get it back. And it's like, there's no reciprocity. Like, who cares? Even if like, I get shot in the foot because they hold on, it should be the right thing to do. I shouldn't need to justify it. There should be no amount of, I shouldn't need to go into this big psychology of like social reciprocity and to equate that to some financial value of how my time, the 4 seconds it took for me to open the door. That needs to go in the calculation. It's like, oh, well, if you make more than $8 an hour, then holding up the door is not worthwhile for you because it's like, dude, this is a fucking joke. Stop trying to justify everything and just do what you think is good. And you don't need to, it's fine. If it's wrong, then like, I don't know. It's like, I don't think people's base instincts is to like become Hitler if they're not like if they don't justify everything. I think having some kind of even letting your biology instinct take over and being reciprocal of doing nice things or just thinking and going towards virtuous ends, even if it's not for other people, even if it's for yourself. I don't think you just by default become a gorilla who's going to run around and kill and rape everybody. I think there's some amount of that doesn't need to be socialized in. I think even without this process of socialization, which is kind of borders on indoctrination at times. I think even without that, you're not going to have a bunch of evil people. Like there's people that go to school that become great, or that don't go to school that become great people, not because they missed out on the they missed out on the section of ethics in school. They were sick that week, so they're gonna be Machiavelli. It's like, really, you don't think there's some kind of innate goodness, and it's kind of a sad reality to exist in if you don't think there's some innate, again, kind of spiritual almost goodness. It doesn't have to be rooted in a religion that has a name. It doesn't have to be rooted in anything scientific. In fact, it probably shouldn't be, because at a certain point, again, like I made the argument before, that I think science is not. I've blogged about this. You can, if you're curious, you can look it up. But science is nihilistic and existential. And I think the word I used with science is suicidal, because at a certain point, being overly rationalist, you can kind of justify suicide more than you can life, which I don't think is, or it doesn't. I didn't make that argument. I think the argument I was making is that after a certain point of rationality and reducing things and trying to be mathematical, you can then justify that life and death are equal. There's not any inherent goodness to life over death being overly scientific. And I think that was really my argument. And again, there's kind of holes in that as an argument, but that's it. The whole point was to point out the absurdity of being overly scientific in everything. And this is as somebody who went who did a lot of science and did a lot of schooling and has gone deep into the depths and the bowels of scientific thinking. I understand how it works, and I understand its value. It's not a useless proposition. It's not to say every time you should just do everything, whatever the fuck you want. And this feels good, I should just do it. Obviously, I'm against that too, but I think that there's balance in all of this. There's a yin yang that I think is easy to adopt and not to have to ignore. And that's maybe why technologists, or not even just a lot of people piss me off, is because they lack any kind of this nuance or balance with things. It's quick to pull out arguments of slippery slope. And there are times where I'm, again, guilty of this myself, but in general, I think there is a balance that you can reach that doesn't involve you being Hitler or you just killing yourself. Like there's a lot in between that, I would hope. It's not that purely of this black and white thing. So I don't know. I forgot what the hell I was talking about with this, but I'll move on. Maybe I said this before, but I guess I'll just go off this again because there's more I want to talk to you about this. But you have to believe in something. Like, to be alive, you have to believe in something. And sure, you can believe in science, you can believe in whatever you want. You can believe in the Christian God, you can believe in the pagan God, you can believe in Buddha. It doesn't really matter. You got to believe in something. You can't live your life believing in nothing. As somebody who's tried, it doesn't work. Nothing can't be your God. Like, nihilism isn't a philosophy that values life. And I think inherently there is value to being alive versus being dead. Not always. Again, there's times where like your life has come and gone and it's time to die. Like I don't think we were designed to live and meant to live 140 years. Like at a certain point you become 70 or 80, your body sucks. Just die peacefully. Don't quit fighting it. Just allow yourself to die. But regardless, like especially in the vitality, there's some vitality is in some ways inherently a good thing. And you need to believe in something in order to be alive. It could be someone, it could be something, it could be some idea, but you have to believe in something. Even something as dumb as money is still a belief in something. I believe in money. Fine. I think it's stupid, but fine. Now, the second clause to this is you got to believe in something, is that whatever you believe in isn't real. So whatever it is that you do believe in, if it is money, it's not real. If you believe in any kind of whatever it is, it's still not real. You have to believe in it, but it's not real in that sense. Like money is real in the same sense that, virginity is real. And I realize that's kind of a crude argument to make, but it is. It's money is real in the same sense that virginity is real. And like the same way the dog would just chew up a pile of money and spit it out. And you're like, what the fuck? That has so much value. The dog would also take your virginity. No, I'm just kidding. That was the buildup for that joke, was the dog would also take your virginity. But the point is that it's not real. It's kind of it's a It's a fake thing, but you still have to believe in something, right? Even if you do believe in money, you can acknowledge it isn't real, or you do believe in like the purpose of your life is virginity and it's not real. Don't let the dog take it from you, but I'm just saying it doesn't matter to the dog, right? And in that sense, the reality is all subjective, right? That's why I think it's people like we need to speak about objective reality here. What's the objective reality? Objective reality is an oxymoron. It doesn't exist. Reality has to have a subjective viewer. And by nature, like in the same sense that money and virginity is not real to the dog, that is because the dog's reality has no conception of that. And again, is the dog no longer in your objective reality? I would argue that that's fucking stupid. So no, reality is inherently subjective. And that's why you have to believe in something, but whatever you believe in isn't objectively real. It's, again, of course, it's subjectively real, and it needs to be because you need to believe in it. But it's not an objective thing. And I think that's part of the reason why I think people that impart their belief systems on other people are retards is because it's not because of that very thing. Reality is subjective and it's your reality and you have to believe in something. I agree with that. I believe in that. But it's only real to you or you and some other people, right? And you can make this democratic argument where it's like, well, most people believe in money, so therefore that is the objective reality. And it's like, well, then it's just a voting game of who believes in most of what, right? It's like if more people believe in, money than they do in, government or whatever it is their religion or God, then it's like, okay, what the objective reality is simply the winningest thing, which again, I don't think is a great is the answer either, is to make it democratic. And then whatever the most people vote on, that is now objective reality. It's like, that's not true either. Because unfortunately, most people are fucking morons. And I refuse to be beholden to the lowest common denominator of what, they would vote on or whatever. Either way, again, the whole sentence being, you got to believe in something. Whatever you believe in isn't really real. And is your subjective reality. And of course that isn't you believe in nothing, you have to believe in something. So anyway, just wanted to talk about that and make the joke about the dog because I think that was funny, at least for me. So anyway, another joke. Actually, I'm not even gonna say this joke. Well, fuck it, I'll say it. I don't know why I even came up with this. Is just a stupid, like, I think my friend sent me like a misogyny meme joke, and so it just popped in my head. It's like, the algorithm must be a woman because it doesn't get a joke. You can't take a joke. That wasn't even a funny joke, but I want to take it off my list. I had it on my list. I don't even know why I wrote that. The algorithm must be a woman because it doesn't get that this is a joke. Speaking of my whole channel, that's why the algorithm doesn't like me because it's a woman. Anyway, I'm going to move on to something less stupid than that because that is criminally bad. Let's see. I just saw something I was going to talk about. Oh yeah. Doing a good job on things. A good job. My thesis, my theory is that anyone who is too willing to do something, anyone who's too excited about doing anything is going to do a bad job, right? I think you need people in order to really get the highest level of craftsmanship that you might want in, some kind of product. And I don't use product in terms of money, but any kind of thing, some kind of artifact. I'll use that word instead. You want somebody who's not too super excited about doing it because they're the ones that are most maybe stickly about quality and things. Because you see this trope a lot, actually. You see it in old fantasy books or in movies or, even like ironically on some levels where it's like, you want the sword made out of, I don't know, some stupid, impenetrable thing. And the only person who makes it is kind of this like dickhead who like, doesn't want to, only wants to make it in very rare occasions. And you have to kind of like begrudgingly force him or her or whoever to make whatever it is that they want, this magic pair of pants that is made up. It's never like this person who's like super excited to like, oh yes, please, I would love to make it. It's like, you're probably gonna do a bad job because you don't have this sense of quality. I think people that have the highest degree of craftsmanship often want to take as little work as possible because they know what the effort that goes into making something of that caliber quality. So that's kind of my theory, is that anyone who's too willing to do something, who's too excited, who's willing, is probably going to do a terrible job, And that's my thought. That was it. That's a whole spin on that. So, yeah. So I think, yeah, highest quality, most awfulness. So anyway, I'll move on to something else. I guess me being an evil person. So I don't know. I've thought a lot because every time I write something and I come back to it and I'm like, I'm ready to critique it, but sometimes I'm just on the money, sometimes I'm just on it, but I've written about this, like authenticity is kind of is a shrinking thing, and it is dying away. People are increasingly inauthentic, and I also think that's one kind of thing you can point at for a mental health crisis where I think we're in for a lot of people that struggle day to day with their mental health, is that they're lacking authenticity. Because if you're inauthentic in all of your daily affairs, you're inauthentic in your relationships and what you do every day, and how you feel, you're probably going to be miserable. That's going to manifest itself in something bad, whether that be an addiction or being a dick, or I mean, I don't even know. On some level, I think authenticity, being authentic, allows you to be more fulfilled and maybe not happier, but more satiated in whatever it is that you do and how you do things every day. And authenticity is kind of dying. It's not in its heyday any longer. You don't really get rewarded for being authentic. And yeah, I could sit here and blame social media, but that's only part of the problem. I can blame technology as a whole, and I'd capture more of it, but there's still a lot more than that. I think socially we don't value it as much. Beyond it being just like refreshing. Oh, he's like refreshingly authentic. Refreshing implies that there's an absence of it, right? It's like lemonade or a beer on a warm summer day. A warm summer day is refreshing because it's cold and you've been hot the whole day. And the refreshing part of it is that it's pulling you out of heat and pain and discomfort to a refreshing something. But like honesty being refreshing. Honesty should be the hot day. Most of things should be honest. Like refreshing should be like a liar, right? That if things were correct, lying would be refreshing, right? Because it would be, you're so used to honesty that it's nice to have somebody that lies a little bit. But now it's kind of the opposite. Like honesty is refreshing, where it's like you don't see that anymore, and it's like, what the fuck? This is lie. So either I am just believe and think evil things, in being authentic and having somewhat of a cynical viewpoint on some things sometimes, and I don't even view it as all cynical. I think it's, again, I'm more just, I guess, kind of sad and wish that we wanted better for ourselves and we wanted more and we did more out of what we did different things other than the stuff that we do. So either I'm evil for this like authentic and honest viewpoint on that, and of course I'm not trying to make myself look better there, or I'm just honest, or I'm evil, and I'm just like people that that do kind of spout off about whatever bullshit, and who I would say are probably lying. They're not lying, and they're just good people, and I'm just an evil person. And I think I should at least consider that as a possibility before making myself out to be the hero of somebody who's going to tell the truth. I should at least consider that maybe I'm not the hero who's being authentic and being honest. No, maybe I'm just an evil person. So that's either those are the things I could either, the two directions I could go. I could either say that, okay, these people are good and I'm evil because we're all being honest here, or I'm being honest and we're all just like, there's some all amount of this quote unquote evil that I depict inside of all of us, and I'm just the one who's honest enough to be unabashed about the fact that I am evil in that sense. So I don't know. It's either believe that I'm evil and these people are good, or they're lying. And everyone's lying. Most people are lying. And I think, I don't know, there's other people that I think, some people, of course, they think they're evil, but I'm like, oh, this person just seems like me. It seems like they're being honest. But of course, they're seen as evil. So it's like, I don't know, is everyone kind of evil and people are lying, or is there, or not? Or I'm just, they should have killed me when they had the chance, that kind of thing. So anyway, let's see what else I have. Moving in, yeah, that's another decent one. Our dominant thoughts. So thoughts that dominate are things that are pathologies in our thoughts. Do they move us in any kind of direction? So I don't know. This is kind of brings in real foo-foo, like manifestation theory. I don't know what you call it, where it's like if you believe something for enough, it'll just happen. Predestination or whatever. I don't know, manifest destiny or something. If you believe in something long enough, it'll eventually happen. So, in that similar vein, like if you think about things or your dominant thoughts, whatever that might be, about yourself, about the world, about whatever, does that end up manifesting itself? And in some sense, it kind of has to. But I wonder to what extent that sentiment is overblown on some levels, where it's like, I don't know, maybe this is more based off of your thinking or of your action, right? It's like I could, I guess the one analogy you could pull from this is like, okay, what if I think all day about how ugly my body is, right? And I like have body dysmorphia about how I look so terrible, blah blah blah. And then those are my dominant thoughts, right? But then you go to the gym and you do lifting, you get all that, and then comparatively your body looks fucking great. Compared to, of course, your dominant thoughts the whole time is, wow, I look like shit. But the artifact is that you actually look good. It's like because you're so critical. So is it either that or in other things it's like, well, am I a piece of shit? Am I a terrible software developer? Does that allow me to become a better software developer? Being critical of myself and developing that, or is like, do I become a shitty software developer because I believe that? And those are the dominant thoughts. So I think there's kind of a big split on that. I don't think people. It's like me being critical or being mean. I guess to be real juvenile about it, and those being dominant thoughts about being critical, at least skeptical of things, I don't think always nets a bad thing. So you're like, well, if you just believe that you're happy and believe that these are all the world's great, everything's going to be perfect and work out. That I don't think it's like, then I just believe that I'm in great shape. Sometimes you have to do something. Like in order to look good in the mirror with your clothes off, there's no believing it doesn't do jack shit. You got to get to the fucking gym. You can't just sit and stare at your tits in the mirror and expect like you to look better because you have gaslit yourself and believing you're better. No. I look in the mirror like, man, I look like shit. I go to the gym and as a result, I look good. And it's because I have those terrible like thoughts that are detracting from weight. Like, no, I think there's some, and of course there's balance with it. I'm not saying that body dysmorphia is inherently a good thing to believe you look like shit. But I think if everyone, had the same thought, people would probably look better. There wouldn't be as much of that. And of course, and that's only in that specific domain. I think there are other ways in which it becomes imposter syndrome. You're just doubting your own competence. And of course, I think if you asked me how I comparatively look to other people, I would have different thoughts. But my dominant thoughts in myself have actually direct me towards having a better physique than if I believed that I looked fucking great and I was perfect and there was like, and that Pop-Tarts made me look thinner or something like that. I don't know. So because I hear the saying is that you move in the direction of your dominant thoughts, which again, I guess you could mutate what I'm saying in order to kind of fit that in some ways. But I think that means just like thinking you're happy is being you're happy, and like thinking you're smart, you'll be smart, or like thinking everything will work out means it'll work out, which I don't necessarily always think is true. On the same ways that like just thinking you're skinny doesn't make you skinny. Like you gotta do something for that. You can't. It's not. The dominant thoughts can actually detract from what you actually want. So I don't totally agree with that. Like you move in the direction of your dominant thoughts. I think your dominant thoughts have power. I'm not saying they don't. I think in my case, it has power to get me off my ass and go to the gym. That's the power that those dominant thoughts have. I don't think that, again, there is power to dominant thinking, but I don't think it's not always linear. Sometimes it's, your dominant thinking in one direction actually pushes you further in a different direction. And I think that is the view of cynics or of skeptics versus like overly optimistic people. So overly optimistic people might move in the direction, oh man, I look so good, I should go to the gym to look better. It's like I would never say that. Like I'd say it's either good or it isn't. And I'm not. Maybe that's just the whole lying part that's back to it. People just lie to themselves and then somehow weirdly do the thing that like their honest self is telling them. But I'd rather be honest with myself and go, okay, whatever, and then do the thing that is actually going to move me in the direction I want to go versus like, trying to lie myself out of what I think is, otherwise a good pathology to have towards something that is more dishonest, but somehow better. It's like, I don't know. It's strange. So I don't totally agree with the fact that you move in the direction of your dominant thoughts. I think there is power to it, but it's not it's not so it's not always obvious for some people how that always manifests. In the same way, it's like people that are willing to do good to make something can oftentimes make shitty things because they're so excited to do it, versus people that begrudgingly do it. They don't do worse because they are critical of themselves. They do better because that's where the quality of work comes from. These are just people that work differently. I think it's not of me to be critical of one working type or the other. It's simply my inclination to be on the side who's more unwilling to do something but do a better job because they're more critical. So that's simply where my belief structure lies in that whole grand scheme of things. So anyway, yeah, I guess this is, I don't know if I want to talk about that. I have intergenerational hatred on my thing, and I don't know if I want to dive in that just because it's gonna be a lot. Maybe I'll talk about the consequences of convenience, right? I think there's people you might look at my life or my choices of what I do ins and outs every day, and just like the technologies that I use. I think that's a very fair way to put it, just because technologies, if you define it broadly, can be useful in that sense. But there's a price for convenience, right? And I think we're seeing this with like data privacy. Like the sure, using Mac OS might be very convenient because everything has this nice little GUI or whatever. But obviously, the price of that is all of the data that you have about you. And of course, I would be one to be privy to that information and to know that, well, okay, whether or not my data is worth that, it is worth it to me on a philosophical level. And if it's not worth it to you, maybe if your only belief structure is money, and you're like, well, my dollar amount of that data that is being formed for me is not worth it to me, then I value my, convenience more than that. Then I'll use Mac. It's like, fine, I get that, but I think you having a strictly monetary viewpoint on the value of your data is selling yourself short. I think it's unfortunate that there's not something about the principle of the thing that drives you against that, because it is inconvenient objectively to to use Arch Linux and to play Minecraft on it and to figure out how to do all that. It is objectively inconvenient, but again, to me, the philosophical price is not worth it. So in the same way, it's like, sure, using Zoom or Google Meet is convenient, but there's ultimately prices that you pay for that. And that's just strictly on like the technological, basis. In the same way, it's like, I think eating is another example. Like, it could be very convenient to just eat protein bars and Soylent or, very, calorie dense foods. But you're going to shit like a brick. Of course it's inconvenient to cook a healthy meal, but you get something out of that. You get the healthy meal, you get, I guess, or it's more expensive in some sense. I guess there's even like a financial consequence to it. But I think that's part of my beef and people viewing things as overly, I don't know, you have to justify everything sense. Everything becomes like this number, like, oh, how much is it worth it for me to cook a home cooked meal versus doing anything for the principle of it. Again, I can't make the financial argument. A financial argument that using Linux is better for you, is better than using Windows. It's not. Financially, it can't be. But ultimately, if you have no value to your philosophy, then it is. And that's the way I'm going to look at it, is that your philosophy of yourself and what's good and what's bad is worth literally zero to you. And that's how I'll justify it. Because your philosophy is worth nothing, whereas mine is worth however much the opportunity cost of me is learning and using Linux instead of that. And not Linux, that's just like an autistic, nerdy example, but I just mean the food is even an even better one. It's like growing your own food is terribly inconvenient. Making your own inconvenient. Of course it's inconvenient, but then like, don't yell at me when you shit like a brick, drinking Soylent and eating Pop-Tarts and potatoes or whatever else is like this, nice production of technology. Thank God we have Pop-Tarts. What would we do without them? What would childhood obesity do without Pop-Tarts? Thank you, Nestle or whoever the fuck makes that shit. Terrible. So there's convenience has its consequences. And I think I'm always skeptical of, this makes it very convenient. And now, what's the catch? Who's making money off this? Who's getting fucked in this scenario? Because it's often not, as much as we love to think of things as like not zero sum. A lot of times they are. There have been technologies that are inherently not zero sum, but I think especially if it's not a technology, I always want to know who's winning and who's losing from this, because there are winners and losers. It's closer to a zero-sum game than we might think. I think that's also part of what, I don't know, drives my more cynic philosophy is a belief that not everything is this non-zero sum. It's a positive sum game where everyone can win. I'm very skeptical of those outcomes. I just don't see that being so blatantly common, is that everybody wins all the time. I think more often there's like winners and losers. Somebody gets fucked and somebody wins. So then if there's something that's good, I want to know, okay, well, this can be good, fine. For some people, that who's getting fucked in this scenario. So it's like, we can have cheap shirts, but now we have to enslave third world countries to do that. We can have Pop-Tarts, but now everyone has to be 50 more pounds overweight and their dick doesn't work. So it's like, there's trade-offs to all of it. That's why I want to know. And of course, everything has a trade-off. There are things that, it's kind of difficult to look at which one, because again, if you abstract it further enough, there's always some atrocity that you can point to as the externality. So like, you can say even like AC in cars, and you point all of that and be like, well, climate change and poverty and African children. You can always kind of point to some atrocity and say like, well, this is the loss of it, which I think is just lazy at some point. I think I don't know. There should be more effort gone into figuring out what exactly, how close to this is a zero-sum game, or a zero-sum thing, and who's winning and who's losing. But either way, I don't know. Convenience has its consequences. I think we should be wary of that when doing everything, and especially as easy as as convenient as it is to just learn a new thing. We should be more okay with using less convenient technologies for that trade-off. All that to say, Windows can suck my dick. All right, that's it. Peace out.